spot. Like Jay said, I'm Stephanie, and I just wanted to talk a little bit today about accessing your creative side. So first of all, we all know that this is a brown bag. Also, this is a brown bag. It's just a plain brown bag, and sometimes our everyday lives can feel a little like that, just a plain, mundane kind of thing. But the good news is it doesn't have to be, because I brought markers. So I'm going to just put these out here, and you guys can share like you learned in kindergarten. And I also brought, I brought these brown bags, and whenever you're ready, if you want to pass these around, just take your brown bag. I'll go back where I'm supposed to be. Stop making the noises. Whenever you're ready, just take your brown bag and alter it however you'd like to do it. You can take notes on it, you can draw on it, you can rip it, you can burn it. Just don't damage anything else in the process of whatever you're doing to your brown bag. And just, go ahead and be creative. So, I'm going to be creative about making my slides work. Or we will not have slides and just have craft time. There we go, we'll just do this. Sorry guys. Okay, so there's a lot of different definitions for creativity. I'm not going to read you what the dictionary says because you have Google, so you can handle that on your own. But I thought it'd be helpful for us to have a common working definition just for the purposes of the presentation. So, I feel like at the very essence, creativity is taking a new approach or coming up with a new idea. So, if you want to go from Phoenix to Los Angeles, you can take a very direct route, or you can take a creative route. Because when you're coming up with a new idea, it doesn't always mean you're coming up with the best idea or the perfect idea, which is an important distinction to make. And we'll get into that more in a little bit. But I wanted to just say that, creative thinking is coming up with those new ideas, brainstorming, design thinking is coming up with an effective solution. And it's important to make that distinction because, if you start worrying too soon about coming up with the right thing to do, then you might miss out on something that's even better. So I suspect that everyone is creative. Some people really like to argue and say that they're not, and I'm not really here to argue with anybody, but I believe that some part of you is creative. And maybe it's not creative in an artistic sense, maybe you're more of a problem solver. Maybe you're less of a Rembrandt and more of a Steve Jobs. That's okay. If you can generate new ideas, you have a creative part of you. In fact, there's research that suggests that non-creative behavior is what's learned. So in other words, we all start out as creative and learn to stop being creative along the way. David Kelly from IDEO calls this the lack of creative confidence and says that as children, we all like to play with clay and finger paint and sing and do all these things. And then as we get older, we get criticism that kind of deflates that creative confidence, and we stop trying and creating and doing new things. So I suspect also that part of the problem might have to do with the kind of movement to make creativity just a job title and not something that everybody does. I think something got lost in the translation when we took creative from an adjective that can describe anybody to a noun that is just somebody in a certain profession. Like, oh, those creatives, you know how they are. So, because there's a couple things that you have to know, and one is that not everyone has to be in a so-called creative profession to be creative. Also, not everyone in a creative profession is all that creative. So you can say, I am a creative, but am I creative? And actually, this became an issue for me a while back. Even though you think like, oh, you're a graphic designer, of course you're being creative. Well, it's kind of interesting. My company, Bold Avenue, we don't just design things, we also manage production. So that means I can design a t-shirt for you, but also I can make sure that, you know, the right shirts are ordered and they get printed right and they're there on time, and that's all great and a great service, but it means that I have a lot of my time that's not devoted to simply creating new things. It's a different kind of creativity perhaps, but it's easy to get kind of in a rut. So while I like to spend my days doing graphic designy stuff, I think all designers would like to spend about at least 85% of their time on color palettes, ampersands, and white space, and thinking about those kind of things. You know, I also found myself having to work on a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of non-designy stuff, you know, checklists and schedules and, you know, all those things with running a business and getting things done on time. So what really kind of broke me out of this rut, and actually before I get to that, I do want to talk a little bit about ruts. This is a rut. Once you get in one, it's hard to get out. This is actually along the Oregon Trail. I didn't take this photo, but I actually had the opportunity to go see it on a family trip, the same place, where back when they were taking wagon trains across the United States, they were going along these areas that were very uneven ground, a lot of brush, it was hard going, but the good thing was once the first few wagons went through, the stone was very soft, and so it started to put these ruts into the ground. And so after a few had gone through, it got a lot easier for the next one. So they would go through and go through, and it worked really well for a while, but after a while these ruts got so deep that you could actually break your wagon if there was a spot that was too narrow, or in some places, instead of one big wide area like that, there was just two tracks where wheels and wheels and wheels had gone through. And once it got too deep, you could break the axle of your wagon. And I don't know about you guys, but my brother and I played a lot of that computer game, Oregon Trail, growing up. And if my intensive research from Oregon Trail was any help on the matter, then I know that breaking an axle could be a really bad thing. You could like be stranded for the winter and only have squirrels to eat or something like that. So all that to say, ruts start out making it easier, and they seem all right until you get stuck. So how do you get unstuck? For me, John Cleese was a lot of help. I saw this video of a talk that he gave at the World Creativity Forum, and he wasn't wearing that. It's actually very hard to find a photo of John Cleese that is Creative Commons and where he's wearing pants. So you're welcome. Anyway, he gave this talk, and he talked about how you can't be creative when you're just rushing around from one thing to another and at a hectic pace. You really need to create an oasis in your day. You need time and you need space. You need boundaries to be creative. Because how are you supposed to let your mind wander and let yourself create if you know you've got a meeting in 10 minutes? So I started looking for ways that I could do that. How can I create those kind of oases in my day? How can I create that space and that time? And I have a lot of tips for you, which I will get to in a minute. But first, I wanted to back up and say a little bit. Before we get to that, we need to talk about you. And if we're going to say that you are creative, the question is, how are you creative? We're not all creative in the same way. There are different things that inspire each of us. You know, you can even just tell this from looking at somebody's Pinterest boards. You know, I like really great examples of design, and to somebody else that does not get their creative juices flowing, they would prefer motivational quotes or pictures of mountains. You know, so we're all different, but know, how are you creative? Are you a writer? Are you a coder? Are you an artist? And based on that, what is it that just really gets you in that creative zone? So once you know that, surround yourself with the things that inspire you. So whether that's putting things on your wall that just inspire you, or you know, examples of work you've done that you're proud of, I think is a great idea. Put things on your computer if you can, like on your desktop. If you're at a job where you can't change your desktop or anything like that, you can always at least change the background on your phone and look at that. But just wherever, whatever you're doing, surround yourself with the things that inspire you. I try to always have something on when I open a new browser tab that is really design friendly and looks amazing, so that just every time I'm opening a new tab, which is a lot, I tend to have like 20 tabs open at once when I'm on the internet. Anytime I open a new tab, like there's something beautiful and inspiring that keeps me in that creative zone. So that leads us into practicing creativity. And there are a lot of ways to do that. And the first one is to give yourself the space and time. And I know that we all have differing amounts of flexibility in our days and control over our schedules. Some people don't have a lot of room to just schedule creative time. So I want to work my way from very little flexibility to more flexibility and give you guys some ideas. So if you don't have flexibility in how you schedule your day, then I would say really focus on surrounding yourself with creativity so that you don't have to take time to go look at something creative, but there's already creative things all around you. Also, rest is very important to creativity. So when you take a break, take a real break. Don't work through your lunch. Don't work through your coffee breaks. Like, get up, move around, breathe, look out the window if you can find one. Talk to someone, and just really let whatever you're working on rest. Because when you've been working on something and you take a break from it, your subconscious keeps working on it. And so a lot of times you come back to it with a fresh perspective, and you're able to even do a better job on it than you would have if you had just kept plowing right through. Another idea, if you have very limited flexibility in your day, is to work creativity into whatever it is that's already on your list to do. My friend Michelle is a great example of that. She's an engineer. She has to do spreadsheets. She makes sure they look beautiful. She goes on color levers and picks out really awesome color palettes, and so those spreadsheets are fabulous and creative. And it's not anything extra from what she already needs to do in her day. So that's giving yourself the time and space if you don't have a lot of flexibility in your schedule. If you have more flexibility, if you are working for yourself and you're able to schedule your days, I would encourage you to schedule big blocks of time where you can be creative. Some of you may have seen the article about makers versus managers. A manager can have a day full of meetings with just maybe an hour gap here and there and still be productive, because in that hour he can catch up on emails and do those sort of things, walk around and annoy his or her employees, I guess. But a maker is somebody who's actually designing or writing or creating in some way. It's a lot harder to, if I only have an hour, I'm not going to even have time to really get in that creative zone, and something that requires a lot of concept development and a lot of thinking, I'm not even going to start on it if I only have an hour. So give yourself bigger blocks of time. I try to schedule a day a week that is my creative day. I don't get on the computer right away. I stay offline. I sketch. I work on different ideas for clients as well as internally. I brainstorm, and I look at things that inspire me, and by having that big block of time, it allows great things to happen. Once I started doing that, that really helped better quality of work with actually, in some ways, less effort, because before, it was very hard to get back in the creative zone. But now that I'm regularly taking time to practice creativity, it comes much more easily. So if you can't take a whole day, and believe me, sometimes I can't, try to schedule an afternoon or a morning, a couple hours at least, just to give yourself time, give your brain room to expand, and just to have that time to be creative. The other thing I mentioned before is just to take real breaks. Work hard, but then rest well. Don't be constantly thinking about what you're working on. give your brain time to kind of process it in the background, and I think you'll see that you'll have even better results. Don't be afraid of feedback. It can be really scary, especially if a project is close to your heart, to talk to somebody else about it, but it's amazing what collaboration can do, and just getting a little feedback from like-minded or even differently minded individuals, but people whose opinions you trust and who know good quality work can really sharpen your skills and take what you're working on to the next level. And the next one is just get started. You've probably heard write fast, edit slow. I'm a big believer in that. Just, you know, get the pencil on the paper, do what you need to do. Just get going. You can revise it later, but you're not going to get anywhere if you don't start. So get over that initial hump, get over your perfectionism, and just get going. So I would love to hear more about how you guys find creativity in your days. And I hope that you'll tweet and use the hashtag #BrownBagCreativity. Just keep in mind, the important thing is just to get going and to try new things and give yourself the time and space to be creative. Thanks. Do you have any questions?
I just have to say, I love that being such a creative mind, and your slides, as simple as they are, just amazing. I just love the presentation. It was, you know, when you hear creative, what normally comes to mind, it has to be this big deal.
But I also wanted to make sure you could see them, because I know with the lights sometimes it's a little tricky, so I was like...
Do you come here often? Do you know?
Yeah,
But I do, I mean, it's funny how when people think about being a creative type, it's about, you know, does it have to be this big grand thing, and it really doesn't.
I think
there's creativeness and simplicity.
Yeah, and actually a lot of times the best solution for something like will later look like the most obvious one, but a lot of times your best solution is just stripping things down to their very essence, and that could be creative as well. It doesn't have to be a million different things. So yeah.
Stephanie, are there any particular people that really inspire you in terms of their ability to be creative and what they generate?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just, over the weekend, I was at the Here and Now conference with Phoenix Design Week, and it was a whole conference of inspiring speakers. I think there will be slides and stuff going up online soon that people can see. But just other designers in the community. I mean, April, not just because she's here, but like for real, she inspires me, and just, you know, seeing other just talented people. Yeah, there's a lot of them, even right here in Phoenix. Yeah. Yeah.
What are you doing most often when you come up with your ideas?
What am I doing?
Yeah, are you doing one thing, or, I mean, a lot of times I find myself, brainstorming, doing one particular activity. And I was just wondering if you have.
Yeah. So just for the cameras, the question is, what am I doing when I come up with creative ideas? A lot of times I'm drinking coffee. I am sketching. I'm a lot of times not on the computer. But yeah, when I have my creative days, I have a certain amount of time that I don't allow myself to get on the computer, because I think sometimes you just, excuse me, get sucked into like email and that kind of stuff. So I have my coffee. I look either through like some magazines, or just I'll look at different design blogs on my phone. Somehow that helps. And then I sit there with fine tip Sharpies and scratch paper, and I just start drawing what is coming to mind. I'm sorry. And usually at least a couple of them will. Sorry. Oh God. It's real late too. That would be great. All right, live stream people watching me cough. Usually those ideas become...
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of times I'm walking or hiking or someplace where I'm far from the computer or any piece of paper, and that's when I come up with the ideas, and I'm looking, and I usually just jot them in my phone or something, but it's always when I'm doing something completely opposite.
Yeah, definitely. Also, you know, the proverbial idea in the shower, definitely. Talking with people.
Right before you go to bed. Just like you lay
Yeah,
down,
when you're
like,
trying to sleep.
No, not now. And you gotta,
Definitely.
I've actually had a situation a couple of times, particularly when I was doing like a lot of front-end coding and stuff like that. We were kind of pushing a lot of the envelopes as far as like what CSS could do and that kind of thing. And I remember being really upset and being like, I don't know the answer to this, and I actually fell asleep. And the next morning, I swear to God, I woke up and I had the answer. And I sat down at my desk and I literally did what I've already done. Like I've already found the solution. It's just a matter of implementing it.
Wow.
It's really impressive.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, there's really something to be said for sleeping on it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, for
Really
sure.
cool.
For sure.
well, all you'll do is get more frustrated if you can't come up with a solution and you're
Right.
trying so hard.
So yeah, breaking out of that like cycle of frustration is very important as well. Does anybody else have a question or want to show me their awesome bag that they made?
I took notes.
Yay! Look at that. Nice. That's super. Oh, also, I meant to mention this book, Wreck This Journal, and also Carrie Smith has a couple other books out, but it's all about encouraging creativity and getting over your perfectionism. So there's all kinds of random activities in here, like this page is like make a funnel and drink some water out of it, like you're pulling it out of the page. You're supposed to cut through several layers of the book, which I did. There's a page where you just draw a bunch of circles on it, scribble, and it's just about, you know, kind of getting out of that rut and that boxed in kind of way of thinking.
What's the name of the book again?
Wreck This Journal. Yeah, and so, you know, I grew up in a house where books were basically sacred, and, you know, you never like set a book down like this or anything, and so to have a book that you're supposed to destroy, it's surprisingly hard for me, even though that's the purpose of it. But it's, I feel like, really good to help me push past those boundaries and think in a new way. Anything else? Super, well, thanks for coming.